Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 2023 T3 Top 5 presentation here. We just released our top 5 lists on Monday this week, and we wanted to facilitate the conversation a little bit about explaining the lists, the rankings, some of the methodology behind it, and some of the analysis that comes off of that. And with us today, we have Dean Cottrell and Lisa Picardo, who run the brokerage and team consulting division at T360. They're in the depths of this at a daily basis with brokerages and teams. And so they see this at a granular level. And so they're going to provide the insights as we run through some of the takeaways and some of the data that we've presented and digested for the release. So Dean and Lisa, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Paul. Good to be here.
It's going to be a good conversation. So, as I think we'll start by providing an overview of what is the top 5, and first of all, it's the first section, or it's one of the sections of the T3 Real Estate Almanac, which comes out every year, and we rank the most powerful leaders in January. When the SP 200, we do the top. Dean's got the book. It's 500 pages all told at the end, but the first 5 months of the year release digital sections of it. We have the organized real estate section. We have a technology section actually coming next week. And we have this top 5, which is a preview to our corporations and our Mega 1000 list, which ranks the brokerages and the enterprises and franchise brands and franchisees. And so this just allows us to get who are the biggest of the big. We validate all this data. We come together and we present it in this way. So I guess we'll just jump right in. So I think overview, we should stress like this, there's a methodology behind this. This data we pull from, a lot of these companies are public companies, some of them are not, but we get this data directly from the companies we validate, and we only use US only data, and we pull out commercial data. So all of this is residential only and US only, which is an important distinction to make, because that's where this list is a US list. And so it differs some from the 10K numbers that folks might be familiar with that are reported there. So we'll jump right into the enterprise rankings. And I think you contextualize what is the enterprise. I think it'd be good to maybe Dean or Lisa to kind of explain the definitions here, because they're pretty different, the categories we have here.
Yeah.
So on enterprise, this is one thing that think of like an enterprise is going to be, I guess, probably give examples. So you have Anywhere as an example. You see Anywhere and Keller Williams and Remax, Home Services, American Compass. So that ranks out our top 5. Not our top 5, but the top 5 when you look at this category. And you'll see Anywhere. Anywhere is going to have multiple brands underneath it, along with Anywhere Advisors, which is their company-owned store. And you'll see that ranked very high when we get into the brokerage space. So this is the first setup here with enterprise, is really all-encompassing of any entity that's in real estate, and then how much are they doing in the form of volume, sales volume, production, agent count. And so Anywhere is going to have all those brands of Coldwell Banker, ERA, Better Homes and Gardens, Sotheby's International Realty, so on and so forth. And then you got Keller Williams, who is Keller Williams, right? And they had the franchises out there. And then Remax is franchises. And Home Service America is going to be the Berkshire Hathaway. It's out there, along with the company-owned stores. They also have some company-owned stores that are under different brands, like Long and Foster is an example. And then you have Compass, which is just Compass. But Compass, as a brokerage, not even a franchise, they're ranking in that top 5 under their performance of 228 billion. So that's enterprise. We want to give, and we'll actually, and Paul will get into this, we're going to get into the details of, all right, what are the franchises and how do they rank? What are the brokerages and how do they rank? But we're starting off with a big umbrella here with enterprise.
These are the largest of the large. To your point, these are franchise. This is production franchised offices and also company-owned offices. So this is just merging them together. This is acknowledging the companies that you won't see on other lists, but like this really shows like these are massive companies, and if you don't include those together, you can't tell who's the largest of the large. So that's why we do it. Another thing we should stress is that these are we rank by sales volume. So that's the filter, the primary filter by which we're filtering these rankings out. There's also transaction size, of course, but we are filtering. These are top 5 by sales volume, and we have transaction size data available as well. But that's something to orient viewers and readers as well.
And we also have there, if you back up, we have the year-over-year sales volume, and whether everybody decreased, right? But and the market share too for 2022.
Yep. And the market share is calculated. This is like many in the industry do against NAR existing home sales. So what percentage of their sales volume versus the overall sales volume as determined by existing home sales. And so that gives us a kind of an overview of like how big, how impactful are these companies? Are they touching, what percentage of the volume are they touching in the industry? You know, and anywhere is like nearly a fifth. Like one of their companies or franchisees.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot. It's a big, significant organization. Okay, next we'll jump to brokerages. This is company-owned offices, and here's like kind of the top 5. And Lisa, maybe you want to give us like
yeah, sure. I'll touch on this. So Compass, as we know, this is, Compass. I mean, they don't have franchises. Anywhere Advisors, for those of you that don't know, is the old NRT, right? So, so that would be the company owned for Anywhere, which is predominantly Coldwell Banker, but also Sotheby's International Realty offices and some Corcoran offices as well. One of the things I looked at, and of course, Home Services America, we talked about that a bit. I mean, that's their the brokerage. So, and again, I don't think people realize, like Dean, that Long and Foster, some people don't realize that is a Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Here in Denver, Kentwood, right, is a Berkshire Hathaway. Edina Realty would fall into this category as part of Berkshire Hathaway, company owned, number of companies. And then EXP, the only company of note here that grew the year-over-year sales volume 20%. That's substantial.
We'll touch on that later in this presentation.
Okay.
Like, exactly. I mean, it's a clear outlier. It beat the market, but also it's the only one that's positive, which is, stands out.
Yeah, and Douglas Elliman, and of note here, and I don't know that we have a slide exactly on average sale price, but Douglas Elliman's average sale price was $1.6 million.
We have that later, but
awesome.
that is they have the fewest number of agents, but the highest per agent sales volume, and also per transaction sales, the average sales price. So they're definitely at the luxury end. They're in those luxury markets. Yes. So, and all of these companies, interestingly, they're all public. So, we've known that real estate has gone public in the last few years, and this is a testament to, the biggest brokerages in the land are all public companies. And the 6th company, Redfin, we don't have presented the data yet, but we'll have the Mega, they're a public company. So, it's definitely, the real estate industry is definitely professionalizing and growing up. Next, we have the franchise brands. And Dean, do you want to run through and kind of describe just to clarify exactly what we mean by franchise brand, and to kind of run through maybe the top 5 here?
Yeah, so now we're going underneath the enterprise. Some Keller Williams Realty's franchise. So these are franchises. These are where you have a franchise or the owner of the franchise, the brand name, and the tools and systems that go with it, and a franchisee, someone who then signs on and agrees for a term to work under that brand name. You've got Keller Williams that as the franchisor, and that as the franchise operation. And just a staggering, I just saw a new article came out on Real Estate News, having their agent count almost at 200,000 across the globe, 174,000 in US and Canada. So by far the largest organization by agent count that we have. So Keller Williams, you see Coldwell Banker, and remember, as a reminder, Coldwell Banker number 2, number 4, Sotheby's International Realty, both fall under Anywhere. So those are 2 franchises underneath Anywhere as an enterprise. When you break them out and say, okay, how big are they? Those are those numbers. And you have RE/MAX as a complete franchise operation. and then Berkshire Hathaway Home Services coming in at 5. So
Yeah.
some good numbers.
And
The
actually,
only thing I want to mention is that Sotheby's International Realty is the smallest as far as the number of franchises. So that's a pretty substantial sales volume based on the number of franchisees that they have.
again, that luxury story, we're
Yes.
about the higher volume, which is, I think, we hear companies talk about this. I think luxury is becoming a bigger and bigger focus for a lot of companies. You see
Mhm.
people like EXP launched a luxury division, I think last year, and you hear these on earnings calls. Luxury, there's a variety of reasons to focus on luxury, and I'm sure you're seeing that in some of the consulting business that you're doing, of like how to leverage that and account
Yeah,
for
we
that.
talk about that, how to increase your average sale price and your per person productivity. And that's something we work really closely with them on.
And as the market fluctuates, we know it's like the slowest to get impacted, and it's the quickest to come back. I think that's the general takeaway on that, usually the way the market changes. So it's not only you at higher volumes and higher prices and more take home money, but you have a little bit more resiliency as far as market fluctuations. One thing to note is like, so Remax, Coldwell Banker moved into number 2 from the year ago. And so it's like, you can see the numbers are really close. They were really close last year. So it's not really significant, but now Coldwell Banker comes to number 2 in the franchise brand, which is something to note. And, as we track this year to year, this is one of the reasons we do it. So you can kind of tell what's happening in the industry and like, how do you understand it? And what does that mean for your business? And who should you be looking at to maybe emulate or work with, or, a variety of things, or where are the opportunities? So here, then finally, we have, this is the 4th list that we presented in the top 5, is the franchisees. And the franchisees are the companies, these are individual brokerages, but they are affiliated with one of the franchise brands. Right, Dean? And so we have,
That's right.
we have Remax Gold at the top, which represents a number of Remax. They've been acquiring a number of Remax companies over the last few years.
And the same with Majestic, right? They have 9 Sotheby's International Realty franchises in the West. Yeah, and of note there, I think is interesting, if you look at those numbers, their per person productivity is $11 million, an average sale price of over $1 million. So strong again in the luxury market.
Yes. And, as we mentioned up top, this is a sales volume. We are looking at sales volume as the top 5, not transaction size, because transaction size would be a quite different top 5, I think. And so we're seeing the luxury players are definitely, they have a stronger presence in this, in these rankings here with the top 5 because of the sales volume focus. And Majestic Realty is, the last couple of years, they've been using that more because it's Live Sotheby's in Denver, and like they roll up, there's a number of individual brokerages that they've rolled up into a kind of a bigger company, and so that's where Majestic Realty fits in. And is any of these, I know Gold Nation's been on a tear, is any of these other stand out to you, Dean, these franchisees?
What stands out to me, and one comment I have about this, is sometimes when we get infatuated a little bit with sales volume and the size of this, it doesn't correlate to profitability. Because some of these organizations have positioned themselves into making money more in transaction costs, transaction fees, things like that. So sometimes it's not just like, oh, because they're selling more, they're making more. So there are ways to position an organization where the revenue is to a point that is very healthy in an organization. So that's just one side comment I want to make. I think it's extremely powerful. And it's huge when you're doing X number of units or X number of sales volume in a market, you have market share. Once you go behind the curtain and say, okay, that's awesome. What's going on behind as toward mechanisms to drive profitability to these organizations? That's a whole nother area.
It's huge. And we have some additional analysis coming out in the next couple of weeks about the profitability of each of these companies, because all of these companies are or a lot of these companies, not the franchisees, but these other companies are public, and they publish many of these companies, they publish their net income and their revenue. It's like, okay, which companies are the most profitable, which I think that's where the rubber meets the road. We've been talking about that a lot with Compass at the top, but as we know, it's been really struggling with net losses every year. and profitability, which is a huge, I mean, as you guys know, I think that's where everything boils down into your work is like, how do you, we're in this is a business. At the end of the day, we're trying to be productive and profitable.
And so then the trend report talks about Berkshire Hathaway being the most profitable in our 2023 trends report. If you missed it, it's a great chapter on what makes them profitable.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, that's why we're in theory doing this. Yeah, it's a little bit different with, you know, venture capital mindset and all that, but at the end of the day, eventually it's time to make money. And I think Compass and a lot of companies now are really looking at really hard. Compass is cost cutting a lot and structuring and really focused on, like a lot of companies, to figure out profitability now that they've grown. So now we're going to dive into a little bit of, there's a lot of data here. And like some of the analysis that we've done, initial analysis we've done, just to help understand what's happening. So this is analysis of the top 5 companies in each category from the market share from 2018 compared to 2022. And I think what's interesting is that the enterprises, their market share at the top 5, the 5 largest enterprises, has actually gone down, which is interesting. Same thing with franchise brands, but brokerages have gone up, which I think Compass and EXP probably have a big say there. Anything surprise you or stand out to you guys about this data presented this way?
Well, I think to your point, EXP being up year over year, that's a huge increase. That's 6.1% top 5 brokerages, and EXP going up versus everybody else going down.
20% up, right?
Yeah, I mean that has a lot to do
just
with
in
that
this
area.
year. I mean, wonder what EXP's up since 2018 would be, you know, triple digits.
Yeah, it's. I mean, they've exploded in recent years, which we'll touch on a little bit in a slide to come, because we are. It is worth calling out because they were the one company, the brokerage, that year over year they not only did they beat the market, they were the only one that had a growth in some of the key metrics. So here's the, well, to the point. This shows that we're just looking at the brokerage category. So again, we have those 4 company categories. This is the brokerages. So from 2021 to 2022, this shows the sales volume change and the transaction side change. You can see blue is sales volume, red is transaction side, and this is a percent change over year. And you can see in the middle, in all caps, there's market. That's the market. So the market dropped sales volume 9.4%. And you can see where all the companies left to right, it's kind of done in sequential based by sales volume. So Home Services was down 16.6% sales volume year over year. Douglas Elliman Realty was then down. You can kind of reach left to right. Of course, the outlier on the right is EXP. Anything jump out at you, Lisa, when looking at this?
Well, I just think, like, when we look at transaction sides, right? If the market's down almost 18%, Compass is actually outpacing the market, right? With their transaction sides anyway, and almost even with the market down. Anywhere Advisors is outpacing the market slightly, EXP is really outpacing the market.
Yeah.
This also just accentuates to me the underlying rule that we've known from the beginning is recruiting and adding, you know, agents to your roles is so important. As EXP has had growth, everyone else, you can see if you, with the down market, if you can add productive agents, of course, to your organizations, you're able to offset some changes in the market, right, by growing your market share. And Lisa's point is very well taken in the fact that we want to continually encourage everybody to compare yourself to the general market. So I'm glad you had the general market statistics here. That's one thing you want to see as the tides goes up and down in units and in sales volume in your market. You know, are you riding the tide? Are you losing ground to your competitors? Right. Are you gaining ground?
And context, always important. Context is everything. It's like you're down.
I remember that. Like when we do consultations with clients and we go through the annual business review, we look at these 7 key performance indicators. And one of the things we've had a company that's very excited because they're up 20%. Well, in 2021, they're, you know, or 2022, the market was up 40%. So being up 20% isn't so great, right? And then we also talk about, like, the number 1 key performance indicator that we talk about is recruiting, like Dean just spoke to. And we always say we could really stop here because that fixes everything. You know, you can forget about the other 6 if you focus on recruiting.
of recruiting, let's go to the next slide where we call out EXP, because that is where I think it's the agent count is really where they have achieved their growth. Because on the back of agent count, sales volume and transaction size goes up.
Mhm.
And you can see they're the number one by agent count in US. This is US only. You'll see, I don't know if they publish this broadly, and we got this directly from EXP. This is US only agent count, and they they have international, and they have Canada
Right.
now. So that's their US only, but they grew it by 17.3% from a year ago. And you can see these are the other top 5 brokerages of the percent growth year over year, and then
Mhm.
the number of agents they have. You see, they just completely outpaced. And we did a deep dive on EXP in the trends report a couple of years ago, and I think it's really interesting as you guys know, like the model where there's an incentive. Is they don't usually use marketing, external marketing. It's really they're providing equity, and then the recruiting of the
Revenue
agents.
share.
Yes, the revenue share.
Mhm.
Maybe we can maybe explain it briefly, Lisa, if you have it top of mind.
Yeah, so they get a percent for every agent that they bring in. They get a percent of that agent's revenue, and up to a certain point. And that model is really working. I mean, we work with we work with a number of EXP teams, and that's a huge part of their production also, but they're recruiting and
And
growing.
they have a low cap.
Correct.
So if you look
Mhm.
at what the money they actually return to agents, the company keeps about 10%, and that's much lower than other companies, but they have no marketing expense,
Right.
or very little marketing expense, I should say.
Well, you have to, everything goes into, you have to take everything agreed with that. In EXP, we did a deep dive for those that are watching this on EXP. Paul dove into the numbers and it lays it out very clearly. It's probably, I think, 2 years ago when we did the EXP deep dive on them. But the value props like Anywhere Advisors, Home Services, these other are listed here. And frankly, other independents go outside of this because really there's still, this is one point that we want to make. There's plenty of business to go around. So
Mhm.
these are the big fish and they're swimming around, but there's 50+% of, all the units, and there's so much revenue. And when we work with brokerages in specific areas, you typically have the no name brands, the independents out in that market that are actually doing or own the market. Frankly, it might be number one in market share in their own specific marketplace. And it really comes down to that value prop. EXP is very clear, very concise with their value proposition. It's out there. You can hear it, see it right there, and they lay it right out. They don't hide it. But there's others too that have different offers, and sometimes in specific markets, the specific agents, it resonates with them. So you really, one of the things that we work with organizations is making sure they hone in their value and how do they express it in a very clear, very concise, and a very compelling way.
And I think this next slide, this shows per agent productivity by the company. You can see EXP has the agents, but they're doing the least average volume. So their transaction sides are fairly in the middle, but like the per agent volume is down. So this is the core. This is the other side of it. This is part of their model. This is part of the different in it, like as far as profitability and all that for the agents themselves. All this stuff factors in. It's like all
This
about.
is interesting to me that home services went down almost 50%. Like that's substantial. Like in their per agent productivity. I mean, I wonder what they did. I don't know, but that seems like a lot. Where Compass is rising, Anywhere went down to Douglas Elliman went way up.
Actually, These aren't year over year. These are just sides per agent.
Oh, got it. This is sides. Okay,
Sales
got it. It
volume
was
per
confusing.
agent is
Sorry.
red. This
Yes,
just yeah. That's
got it.
good that you call. I should have framed this up so it's clear that this is just like a snapshot of 2022.
Okay, sides and.
Yeah, exactly. So EXP has in red. You can see it's the lowest per agent sales volume.
Yeah, the standout here to me is, of course, Compass. And Compass, is a reminder, it's just the second year, correct me if I'm wrong, second year they've been number one in
Yes.
the brokerage category. So they knocked off Anywhere Advisors. I almost said NRT. I'm used to calling it NRT. But NRT held that for 20 years, give or probably more than 20 years. It's the number one broker in the US. And then Compass came on and took that last year. And then this year has continued. But the 8.1 is, I mean, that's that other than Douglas Elliman, so you can see they're really kind of positioned in that higher price point market. And that was typically one of the rollouts of these organizations, like Compass, Douglas Elliman, for example, is looking at the higher priced markets. And if I flash back into the 1990s, Anywhere Advisors at the time was Realogy, and before that Cendant, but let's say Realogy, they positioned their expansion plan was all about going out into the largest metropolitan markets in the country and looking to acquire organizations and then roll them under their brand. And that was part of it. And they ended up rolling out to 27 different local cities, things like that, that were very large, higher price point turnover markets. And then outside of those areas is where they would do the franchises. So that was kind of that was that plan. And it's also been, I've also heard it described, just for those watching, as the NFL city expansion kind of idea. NFL teams go into cities that can support an NFL football team, right? As an example. This is just an example.
It extends like the high price. You leave with the higher price, the bigger markets. I mean, I know Douglas Elliman, we just interviewed their CEO recently for a piece coming out soon. And it's like, that's the game plan. It's like going to the following where and then filling in the gaps in between. And to your point, so it's interesting because this is part of model and like how does these companies and what is profitability? For example, like Compass went to these most productive agents. They're paying higher splits. These guys, as we know, there's escalation. As you do more volume, the agents take more of the commission percentage. And Robert Refkin on the earnings call recently, they're now targeting less productive agents so the split, they can figure out the commissions coming down. So I anticipate next year that these average numbers will come down. They'll have more agents, but the company perhaps may be more profitable. So all this ties together. This context really matters here. So I think that was a quick run through the top 5. Thank you for providing your expertise. There's a lot here. realestatealmanac.com has the data itself, so anybody viewing can go and look at the list. But Dean and Lisa, thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul. Like, you're just a wealth of information and knowledge, and you're the person who establishes the contact. So we appreciate you.
Well, likewise, it's a two-way street. So the full list, these are the top 5. The full list come out in the next few weeks for the franchise brands and the franchisees and the brokerages. So stay tuned, and we'll be sending that data out soon. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. Great job.